Good morning, everyone, and welcome to a News Forum special report. I'm Vonny Sweetland, and as we continue our journey on the subject of advancing Canada's Black community, we're here with a very special guest. Former MPP, Speaker of the Legislative Assembly of Ontario, Canada's envoy to the Dominican Republic, and the first Black Canadian to hold a cabinet-level position in Ontario, Alvin Curling. Good morning, Alvin. Thank you so much for joining us. It's a real pleasure to have you.
Well, good morning, Vonny. It's my pleasure also to be here.
Alvin, you heard that opener. You've got a very impressive resume. We also know that you've got schools named after you in your honor, such as Alvin Curling Junior Public School in Toronto. After such a long tenured career, how do you feel your time in politics has contributed to Ontario's Black community?
Well, the fact of the matter is, when you say if it contributed to the Black community, it was rather interesting. I think they see it as a fact that if he can do it, I can do it too. So the contribution is that they feel representative a part of it, and some of the issues in which they would like to address, they may feel rather comfortable in coming forward and realizing it's not a mystery in all of this. It's just a participatory way in which we can participate in a democratic society, and they would be welcome.
Right. And do you feel that all of the things you've accomplished, what went into them? Do you feel that this is easy for other people to emulate?
Well, of course, I think that, like the greatest step, the greatest of conquest is for the first step. And sometimes it's not difficult at all. Many times we see a young kid trying to walk, and you let him go, and you're surprised that one step after the other, they move. And the fact is, the kids feel rather supportive if the parent is right behind them, in which to give them a hand should they stumble. And I feel it is in that manner, in the same way, we're going to venture into any sort of things that are new, or seem to be not people who want to feel that they are welcomed, would feel rather welcome in this world or this part of the system, and to feel that Canada is their country, not as a guest here or so. And that's the problem. Sometimes I find it challenging. People feel that they are just visiting, even though they'll be here 25 years or so. Citizenships and all that is not a part of their psychic. To realize that I belong, I am Canadian, and it's not something that you have to be born into. It is something that acquired in its own selfish nationality. And I feel that's the comfort in which people want to have, not as a visitor, but as a part of it.
And of course, representation matters. Do you feel that we've gone as far as we should on representation? Do we have enough Black MPPs and MPs serving in government?
I think to measure it by whether we have the color inside of there or so, Black MPP or so, it is not quite misleading, but not completely the old story. If people can represent the cause and the purpose and the intent, that is enough Blackness, or that is enough Canadianness we can have. As a matter of fact, if you see it now, what I have seen, I've been fortunate to be in that process of history, wherein that I was born in Jamaica, got elected, and then we got appointed and become the Speaker of the Parliament and become the representative of Canada to tell you that I belong. And if people feel in that way about it all, and this is the same thing as you mentioned, as you are introducing me about the Alvin Curling Public School, that people say, wow, in the sense that, well, if he can do it, what makes him different? And then they realize he's not different than we are. It's just that he stepped forward. And not only that he stepped forward with a confidence that people there were supportive. It's like your parents. They say, go out, and they say they're right behind you. So it is that. They feel very comfortable about that and be a part of Canada.
Right. So long as the interests are in line and they're the same and you're ready to go in and fight for some of these mutual goals, then that's really all that it takes.
And yes, it does. Because the fact is, when I got elected and sat down to see people coming forward to me, the issues that the white or the Indian or the Chinese or the Blacks were coming to ask me about were the same. It was about housing, it was about daycare, it was about healthcare, all consistent with everyone. So it has nothing to do with color itself. But when they feel the difference is that the blacks may not come forward because they do not see that they are be comfortable sitting with
Right.
someone who may be white or so. And
So
then they
they
say,
need to
it
feel
doesn't
that
matter.
that comfortability. I agree.
That's
Well,
right.
we'll pick up just after these messages. So, Alvin, I don't know if you've seen this, and I'm sure you probably have, but the Ford Conservatives recently ended academic streaming in Ontario, citing that it was disproportionately affecting young black students. Do you feel that that was the right move, and what more do you think we should be doing to help black students in particular be successful?
Again, when this present government say they end academic streaming, that's posturing, because that has been on the agenda for years to change that aspect of it all. To end it, is it, as a matter of fact, is it a law that if they found someone, they'd be punished if they find this happening? No, it is something endemic within the system that they are gradually directed into situations where they feel that they feel that blacks will be more comfortable with that, or racial streaming. That's basically what it's all about. So the government now saying that I'm ending that. I'm not on one partisan side or the other. The liberals have done that. It was streaming from even when we had public schools and separate school. You know, you can't go to a public school if you're Catholic, you know, or you only can go to the Catholic school if you're Catholic. And it's a system who had forced Catholics in that way because they were not accepted in separate school, in the public school. So therefore, government would even fund it. That was a matter of fact was done by the Conservative when Bill Davis tried to do that. It was implemented by the Peterson government as a Liberal. So therefore, it doesn't really matter what party they're in as long as the issue addresses the cause itself.
I agree. And do you think that we've done enough so far? Is there more that the government could be doing to advance these issues?
Well, let me. I know I'd like to respond to that particular issue. Let me tell you something that I observed over the years too. My daughter, who is Canadian and black and all that, if I address things about blacks looking at me as a Jamaican or so, we've lost the issue because they are Canadian. Sometimes we're trying to attract people because they're Indians, because they will vote for you as an Indian, or they vote for you as a black, or you for a Chinese. Those people in those gender ratio, the kids and the children of my children and their children are Canadians. And they cannot even understand, I would say, fully Jamaican. They understand Canadian. And when we could bring issues to them in that regard, you know, the fact is that they're not quite sure how they should approach it because they're Canadians. If you get me, I hope I was kind of plain in that for yourself.
Yeah.
You are more Canadian, and I'm here over 50 years now. I'm also would say I'm more Canadian than I'm Jamaican.
Right.
Because culture is dynamic. It keeps on changing, and I have been a part of those changes in Canada all along for 50 years. So I can address those issues here. So therefore, streaming is something not Canadian. It's just endemic in our system of discrimination, and hope it's indelible in the mind of some folks that blacks can only be like that, or Indians can only be like this, but
Right.
all that. And then today, that's where we are.
And when you were serving, was this a hot button topic? Do you recall this being discussed and tabled at different points?
It wasn't really tabled, but discussed about being mindful of the fact. My daughter, for instance, was keep on being streamed in a sort of subtle way out of the progressive way of academics, but in the general way of academics. And the reason that the teacher would have said to her is that I don't think you can be successful. You will fail if you do advance. So my advice to my daughter, go ahead and tell her you want to fail. Tell her to try it and let her fail on that one. Then when you fail, you've learned. Now she's a PhD, she's a doctor now. So how then, if that one was being failed, and many students were not fortunate as my daughter or so. Many are being streamed in that way. Was it discussed? It was talked about many times. And the streaming is not only in the academic or educational field. You can see streaming in the professional field, and most folks who have their degrees of something like that were not even accepted to do jobs here in Canada because of their orientation in different parts of the world. And sometimes it's not racism itself. It's just protectionism. They protect themselves in that factor of life.
Yes, I've heard that so many times from people who come from different countries. It's an issue that they've mentioned to me as well. So I do know that it happens, and it's unfortunate. I think it's good, though, that we're talking and we're taking steps to move to a better place. Just after these messages, we'll pick up right where we left off.
Okay.
We're back with a special guest, Alvin Curling, as we discuss on this show the important topic of advancing Canada's Black community. Shifting gears a little, you've of course had an exemplary career in politics as the first Black Canadian to hold a cabinet position in Ontario. How far do you think we've come on the subject and issue of systemic racism in this country? Have we fixed all of our problems, or is there still quite a bit to do?
Well, let's put it this way. That does not measure the fact that because I became a cabinet minister, I've come that far. There's other issues within the party also that one can go much further. I would call it further than a minister. A minister sometimes is just being saddled by many policies and all that. But other people can be advising ministers, advising prime ministers and all that. Those are distant. When you say, have we come that far? Are we inside the room now? Yes. I think many of us are inside the room now. If you look around, at the table, or so, in another form of saying it, they're at the table now making changes. And that's where it's important. As a matter of fact, have we come that far? Yeah, yes, but not too far enough. If we find the fact, and it's not the system itself, it's sometimes we must be able to participate in that system. We're not citizens. Many people from the Caribbean still yet have not taken up citizenship, wondering why. It is very important to be a citizen of a country, to be a part of it. Yet we cannot really, if you want to call it complain or so, because we're not citizens, be a part of the system, and then we are. So therefore, my progress in itself, I decided to join everything, be a citizen, move forward. When they said that you couldn't be a cabinet minister, I was appointed, yes, and then I became a cabinet minister twice. I became the Speaker of the House, and that was an election itself. Then that tells you then. People say, well, a Black could not do that. I was acclaimed. No one ran against me when I was a Speaker of the House. Have we come that far? Yes, I think we have. People have seen, actually, stop looking at the color and look at the individual, and we've moved forward. But we must walk in this world, or this Canadian world, as a part of as a Canadian, not as a visitor.
Right. The moral fabric and the values and the culture that really binds all of us together.
Exactly.
Right. That's very fair. That's a fair point.
You know, and I don't know if you got a minute or so. So the fact is, when I became an ambassador envoy to Dominican Republic, I was sitting down taking my the president of Leonel Fernandez. We were sitting and I'm getting my credentials, and he said to me, I was even taken back as we sat there and I'm getting my papers. He said to me, I can't believe that we're so fortunate. I said, well, I don't know, Mr. President, what do you mean? He said, you're Black, you're Caribbean, you're a minister, you know about politics, and you come to my country, I'm from Canada, and people normally would say they would see a white coming there. But we are fortunate to have that. That is fortunate because I was able to understand some of the cultural dynamics, understand and speak with confidence about Canada, and that was quite something. That's a distance, when you say that about have we come far enough? We are there. When we're at the table, let us demonstrate ourselves as what we are.
Right, and that was a conversation you had with the president of Dominican Republic.
That's right.
Wow.
And that was him. He was taken aback because the first time he had seen a white person representing what he perceived as a white country. And then, surprising enough, a couple of months afterward, the ambassador to Dominican Republic from the United States was a black man, and he was also a Caribbean individual, a Bullion, And you look at that, and then here we are. He is then as much as an American as anybody else.
Right.
Just like as the First Nation people say to them, we're all visitors here, or we are all, coming afterwards, settlers. And here he has become an American representing America, United States of America. And here is Alvin Curling from Jamaica, born in Jamaica, living in Canada, now representing Canada as a Canadian, because I am a Canadian.
Yes, I think it's a perfect example of both governments in the U.S. and in Canada speaking truth to power on those issues of diversity, of inclusivity, and I think it's a great message to send, particularly on the global stage. I agree.
Yes, because I think so myself.
Well, we'll pick up just after these messages. We're going to continue with Alvin Curling. Alvin, you've been on the front lines in politics for so many years. We've just been discussing that. And you've made a success out of yourself, clearly. If you could give a message to young Black Canadians watching you now, what would it be?
Well, I'll go back to the first thing I said. Be yourself and be Canadian. Don't behave in any way, Black Canadians, like you're a visitor. You are Canadian. And be confident. The key to all this, though, is education. Make sure that you are there. Question the facts. And we are living in very interesting times now. We're questioning many, many historical missteps, terrible missteps, brutal missteps. Ask questions, demand, that's the background, demand answers to it all, because that's the only way we're going to progress and understand what we really are about. So our young people there, education, I used to hear that when I was young, but that by golly, be educated, and you tell your parents, listen, I like to play cricket and soccer and ball, and don't give me no time. Do your homework. Basically, the simple things like that. Be focused. Do that. Let me tell you a quick story, Vonny.
Of course.
You have to be humbled about all this thing too. I was flying back, I think, from Toronto to Moose Factory, way up in Ontario, in the government jet. Small. When I say jet, it's just about 6 of us can hold in it anyhow. And the fact is that I was looking down on Ontario, and saw this sort of jewelry. As you know, when you all travel in the plane, you look downstairs, it looked like a jewel of all these things, beautiful lights and all that down there. And I was looking through the window, and I started to tear up. I couldn't believe that I, a young man from Franklin Town in Kingston, Jamaica, kicking a soccer ball, barefooted, now was responsible for every light down there, because I was the Minister of Housing, responsible for all that. And realized too, not only that, taking it further, that every light down there represents a life. Somebody's going to work, somebody's being born, somebody's dying, and it teared me up to realize what a responsibility, and how that we all are, no matter how grand your titles may be, that we are just as simple as a human being to be able to identify with all those. I never forgot those days, and the deputy minister at the time, to ask me what was happening, and I could hardly tell him because I couldn't express that in words, but in feeling that, my golly, we all can play a role, no matter how humble or simple or where we're from, that if we step forward and keep going forward, not only that you can do it, but people behind you want you to do it. And that's where I am today. And I'm just so fortunate to have all of that today.
Yes. Well, heavy is the head that wears the crown, for sure. And I'll say, I'm sure over the years, there must have also been the element of feeling overwhelmed that you are responsible for so many people, their lives, their livelihood.
Oh, yes. And there also, too, there's a hint in what you just said. There are times, is there racism and all that? Yeah, I've been thrown many kind of arrows and things like that. And I looked at it very closely whether or not this one individual could bring me down. And I said, no, if they want to mimic me in the house with my accent at the time, and laugh at it and all that, maybe it wasn't racism. It's just that if the person is being stupid and trying to be foolish, and they couldn't even mimic a good Jamaican accent. So therefore, the fact is you move on itself. I tried to run for the president of the party. Yes, and I was being challenged in many, many ways. I saw subtle things of discrimination in all of that, you know? And and so therefore it is one of those things that you say to yourself, do you stop and deal with those issues, or do you move forward? You see yourself, you know?
Right, right. Well, look, I appreciate this conversation. Thank you so much for joining us, Alvin. It really has been a pleasure. You're a political idol of mine, and I firmly believe in giving people their flowers when they deserve it. So thank you for all that you've done, your contributions to this country, this province. You've impacted so many lives.
Yes, thank you very much, Vonny. It's wonderful talking to you, and all the best to you.
All right, you take care.
Okay, bye-bye.
Thank you to all of you who've joined us from home. This is the show where we discuss subjects that are tough and challenging, but key to moving us forward. When we talk about advancing Canada's Black community, we need to engage with so many different people, which is why it was a great pleasure to sit with Alvin Curling, former Liberal MPP, first Black Canadian to ever hold a cabinet-level position in Ontario. This has been an amazing conversation, and I hope you guys have enjoyed it just as much as I did. Again, I'm Vonny Sweetland, and as always, all voices matter.